It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years. This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future. It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
In my lifetime, we've faced 2 world wars, a war in Korea, and then Vietnam. And I know this: I want our children never to have to face another. A president's most important job is to secure peace, not just now, but for the lifetimes of our children. But it takes a strong America to build a peace that lasts. And I believe with all my heart that working together, we have made America stronger and prouder and more secure today. And now we can work toward a lasting peace for our children and their children to come. Peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. Today, America is prepared for peace. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it, now or ever.
Sure, there's a disappointment in what happened, but the cause goes on. And don't get cynical. Don't get cynical, because look at yourselves and what you were willing to do, and recognize that there are millions and millions of Americans out there that want what you want, that want it to be that way, that want it to be a shining city on a hill.
On the plane going back, I went over and I had a convention ticket, and I asked him if he'd sign it as a souvenir. And what he wrote was, "We fought, we dreamed, and the dream is still with us." And looking back on it now, he never gave up. He just kept right on going. It was this incredible crushing defeat, and it didn't crush him. Just came back up, shook his head, and said, "Okay, what's next?" And that began the campaign for the year 1980.
Yep. He never said never. He was always underestimated. We're going to spend a lot of time on the great Ronald Reagan on this program today, and almost no time on Barack Obama.
Mr. President, in talking about the continuing recession tonight, you have blamed mistakes of the past, and you have blamed the Congress. Does any of the blame belong to you?
Yes, because for many years I was a Democrat.
There you go. Solid as a rock and funny as hell.
There is a bear in the woods. For some people, the bear is easy to see. Others don't see it at all. Some people say the bear is tame. Others say it's vicious and dangerous. Since no one can really be sure who's right, isn't it smart to be as strong as the bear? If there is a bear.
This was America in 1980, held in contempt by foreign nations. Across the world, people were losing their freedoms. So many countries thought America had seen its day, but we knew better. So we stopped complaining together and started working together. Today, America is strong again. We're looking to the future with confidence and pride. America's best days and democracy's best days lie ahead.
What do you think Reagan would have said about the Tea Party movement? Mike Reagan was on here last week. He told you he would have loved it, because Ronald Reagan is the founding father of the Tea Party movement. Here's Reagan in 1964, October 27, on self-government. Cut 2, go.
And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government, or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course.
These are words to never forget. Cut 4, go.
Freedom is something that cannot be passed on in the bloodstream or genetically. And it's never more than one generation away from extinction. Every generation has to learn how to protect and defend it, or it's gone, and gone for a long, long time. Already, many of us, particularly those in business and industry, there are too many who have switched rather than fight. And it's time that particularly some of our corporations learn that when you get in bed with government, you're going to get more than a good night's sleep.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government.
Absolute genius and a ton of guts. Who talks like this today?
I did criticize the president because of our undercutting of what was a stalwart ally, the Shah of Iran. And I am not at all convinced that he was that far out of line with his people, or that they wanted that to happen. The Shah had done our bidding and carried our load in the Middle East for quite some time. And I did think that it was a blot on our record that we let him down. Have things gotten better? The Shah, whatever he might have done, was building low-cost housing, had taken land away from the mullahs and was distributing it to the peasants so they could be landowners, things of that kind. But we turned it over to a maniacal fanatic who has slaughtered thousands and thousands of people, calling it executions.
Building a more peaceful world requires a sound strategy and the national resolve to back it up. When radical forces threaten our friends, when economic misfortune creates conditions of instability, when strategically vital parts of the world fall under the shadow of Soviet power, our response can make the difference between peaceful change or disorder and violence. That's why we've laid such stress not only on our own defense, but on our vital foreign assistance program. Your recent passage of the Foreign Assistance Act sent a signal to the world that America will not shrink from making the investments necessary for both peace and security. Our foreign policy must be rooted in realism, not naivete or self-delusion. A recognition of what the Soviet Empire is about is the starting point.
Back to that Brandenburg Gate. Here's Reagan, June 12, 1987. Go.
Today I say, as long as this gate is closed, as long as this scar of a wall is permitted to stand, it is not the German question alone that remains open, but the question of freedom for all mankind. In the 1950s, Khrushchev predicted, "We will bury you." But in the West today, we see a free world that has achieved a level of prosperity and well-being unprecedented in all human history. In the communist world, we see failure. There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable.
that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Well, sadly, there was a point at which Ronald Reagan had to leave, the end of his presidency. And in his farewell address on January 11, 1989, this is a very short clip, he said the following. At 13. Go.
And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
And that's something to always remember. Now, some of you listening, not most of you, some of you are liberals, or left of center, or you're not sure. And so when a politician or a group of politicians come up with an idea, government-run health care, or cap and trade, sounds appealing to you. Or if you have a problem in your life and some politician or bureaucrat says they're going to solve it for you, it sounds very appealing. This is the deception of tyranny. They're not going to solve anything for you. Like the president said, as government expands, liberty contracts. One of the reasons today I've played so many of Reagan's clips is because there is not a growing but a subtle, kind of annoying voice, or a small handful of voices out there. The Brooks, Dutats, the Frums, and their ilk. Who, when people speak like this, conservatives, they denounce them, they smear them, they trash them, they want another way. They want to go the way of Richard Nixon, or Gerald Ford, or Nelson Rockefeller, or Colin Powell, or David Gergen. You get the point. That wasn't Reagan. Reagan was bold. You knew where he stood, and you know why he stood where he stood. Happy birthday, Mr. President. The week is officially over. The weekend officially begins. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel, and all of you. God bless you. Good night, Spritey. Good night, Griffey. Good night, America.